The Democratic National Convention of 2024 could be described in one word: euphoric. The dust has settled, the confetti's been swept away, and the Democratic Party is charging into this November like a steam engine. But let's not kid ourselves. This convention was more than just speeches and slogans. It was a full-throttle battle cry aimed straight at the heart of the political landscape that's teetering on the edge. Biden, Harris, Waltz, they're all in, and so is the Republican machine. Tonight, this morning, we're diving deep into what really went down in Chicago, peeling back the layers of strategy, messaging, and let's face it, the occasional misstep. And who better to break it all down with than the man who's been at the epicenter of American politics for decades, the one, the only Chris Matthews. You know him from Hardball, the show that made us all political junkies, and he's here this morning to help make sense of where the Democrats stand, where Harris stands, as we barrel towards Election Day. Chris, thanks for being back on the political mic.
Good to be on.
So, Chris, you've watched DNCs over the years. How does this one compare to the ones of years past? There's been a lot of comparisons to 2008 in terms of the energy levels, the euphoria, and the magnetism of the candidates' ability to make people feel like they're a part of history. What do you think?
Well, it was a lot like Denver. It was a lot like 2008 because of the excitement over Barack Obama. And I would go with Barack Obama to the high schools and the gyms, the field houses in Iowa, and I was blown away. I just had never heard a speaker like him. This past week, it's been extraordinary. It's been so unlike Democratic conventions of, say, 1972, where I was at during the Vietnam War, or, even in 64, or later on into the 70s. It wasn't a heartbroken, somewhat anti-American room. It was very positive about the country. And I think it was positive because of a couple of reasons. One is carnage. That's Donald Trump's version of the country. Big city crime, blah, blah, blah. Evil fentanyl and people coming in from across the border. All this negativity. And I think the Democrats reacted to that. I also thought Begala and James Carville put out the word a couple of weeks ago: talk freedom. Take that word away from the Republicans. USA, USA, USA. The Constitution. I love being an American last night from Kamala herself. A lot of that was very positive. It goes with the balloons in a way. It's blow them up, float them in the air, and then let them cascade down at the end of the night. And it shows that we know how to run a convention. I also thought that, and I'm not the first time I've blown away by Michelle. I saw Michelle Obama up in Nantucket, where I'm at right now, speaking to the Nantucket Project last fall about young men and talking about the challenges facing young men who believe they have to be NBA superstars or make $1 billion or else they're a failure. And she said women used to have the option of staying home and raising kids. They had some options. Ironically, the young men today feel, I got to be a superstar. I got to make all this money. I got to do all this. And they wait a minute. Everybody can't be like that. That's not the way the world works. Some superstars, yeah, occasionally there's 4 or 5 I can name. Michael Jordan, for example, from last night. But, now most people are not going to be like that. So why are you talking your kids into that nonsense? Everybody's not going to be a superstar. So she was very smart about that, having raised 2 daughters. But last night or Tuesday night, I thought it wasn't just the speech. It was the dramatics, the way her gestures, everything was in speed, in the right speed. It wasn't, do you ever watch Schumer trying to wave his arms in the air? Come on, give me a break. You don't wave your arms there. You're not that kind. You're like Nixon. You don't know how to do that. But she had this wonderful way of displaying her passion and her views. And that line of her about Trump going for a black job was just a piece of genius. I don't know, maybe her speechwriter or her who came up with it. I kept thinking, where did you come up with that? You nailed him with that one. And then last night, I love being an American. I love this country. It worked for me. I believed it. I think she's running as a regular Democrat, not as a person of the hard left. I don't think so. I think she's running as a prosecutor, which she has to against Trump. Let's face it, she's got to run against perp that way. And what else? I think the organization of the Democratic Party was on rare good display. The Democrats had their act together this week. I mean, a couple nights like they jammed President Biden into 11:30 at night. I mean, that's George McGovern stuff. putting them on at 11:30 at night, although they put McGovern on at 2:30 in the morning. I mean, it was organization on Tuesday night, organization last night. I thought it was great. And I thought Doug Emhoff, her husband, was just a charmer, talking about dating her. And she's a young woman when he went out with her. And it's like a normal conversation of a guy about his girlfriend and his wife. It was a normal conversation. I thought, and we're being nervous about going out with her and all. And I know everything's blended families and it's a little new for some Americans, but there's a lot of blend going on around. And I also thought the room last night looked like America. I have to tell you, that room was more blended than any church I've ever been to. It just looked like the percentages were all there, maybe a little higher among African Americans, but I kept looking at every face. I thought that, again, Michelle's speech, who was African American in the regular sense, a part of the intermigration, moved up to Chicago from the South, because of what was going on still there with Jim Crow. I thought she was really the authentic, recognizable American. I thought when I was always looking at the African-American faces, they were really talking to her. She was talking to them. I thought there was something going on there, really powerful, speaking on behalf of a woman of a blended background, Indian and Jamaican, although the Caribbean experience is close to American. So it was interesting how she played the role. She wouldn't have done that for Joe Biden. Let's get that on the record. She was not going to give that speech for Joe Biden. She was going to give it for Kamala Harris.
And there's been this laser focus from the Democratic Party on the working man after 2016, the blue collar job guy from the Midwest. And I thought that, ironically, Michelle Obama gave a wonderful pitch to that kind of demographic when she said, we worked for what we've got. We didn't have a second, third, or fourth chance, unlike the other guy.
Michael, that is a strong statement to Afro Americans. That is a direct. Do you know what I'm talking about? And I think because everybody knows what they're talking about, the black candidate in politics, the black professional, and I really think that she was nailing it there. Where you get tested, sometimes you're the first one on the fryer, and you sit there on the frying plate, and you're there, and you go, "Oh my God, I'm burnt already, and I'm out of here." I thought that was really a statement to an opera singer, a black African American singer said that to me. We don't get that second chance. So I heard that in her words a lot.
There's been a lot of attempts for the Republican Party to brand Harris. And I said since July 20th of this year, when Biden decided he was going to drop out after much pressure from his party, that there's going to be a race to brand Kamala Harris. And I said, if Kamala Harris is going to have a chance at victory, her campaign has to brand her before MAGA does, before Trump does.
Well said, Michael. Well said. And I think somebody once said that if you don't define yourself, the other guy will, and the other guy's not going to do it nicely. Yeah. And it was very powerful for her to talk. She didn't put in the fact we moved to Canada, though. Did you notice? Because all the places they're moving, but Montreal. I thought that was interesting. Her mother's McGill University. I thought that's true, and I think she's got to be very careful not to get branded on the hard left. If she is seen as a squad member and a woman of color, that'll be too much for Pennsylvania. Just telling you, it's too much. They'll accept generic Democrat, regular Democrat across the street, their ward leader or whatever it is. They're very familiar with who they are. They're not crazy people in most cases. So they'll go, yeah, we disagree on the taxes and a couple other things, but she's a regular Democrat. She's a prosecutor. That's why she has to keep bringing back. I know it is unfortunate to some people, but you're in the law. Saying prosecutor is just part of our life. It's how the system works, and we need prosecutors. And I think the more she leans on the prosecutor part, and I said it the other day on Morning Joe. I said, you got to do what Scott Turow said in his book, Presumed Innocent. The new prosecutor has to walk into the courtroom and point his finger across the courtroom to the defendant, especially in a major case, capital case or whatever, and say, he is the accused. He did it. And the argument is, the author said, if you don't have the guts to point your finger to that human being and say he's the bad guy, the jury will never convict. You have to show a strength of character to do that. And I think she's got the guts to do that. I mean, it takes, but Donald Trump's not an easy person to confront. And in that room with her, and he plays that Godzilla role he played with Hillary, looming up behind her. I still don't know what Hillary's. Maybe she's too much the lady, or she had too many good schools or something. But she didn't know how to turn around and say something terrible, like "Get out of my space, buddy," or something very street-like. And really giving her some attitude back, because you got to meet attitude with attitude. You can't just be politically correct. You have to say, what are you doing over here? You know the rules. We signed them. We both signed the rules. You stay in your place and get back into your place and have a confrontation. But, I don't think Hillary wanted to do that. Maybe she couldn't have. But I think Kamala's got the guts to do that standoff. Get back in your place, buddy. Get over there, because that's what George W. did to Al Gore. Al Gore walked right up to him and looked up. He did the up and down on him. All he had to do was go up and down, and every guy in the world knew exactly what he meant. You can't use the word on your show anywhere, but you know what he thought of that guy for walking into his space. And a woman's got to have the same rules. Don't walk into my space. Don't come into my space if you don't want trouble. And he would have earned it. Yeah. So we'll see. It's going to be one hell of a show, September 10th. I mean, Oh yeah. Because when he comes in with the old Trump and she comes in with the new Kamala, it'll be fascinating. And somebody's going to lose. Somebody's going to lose that night.
No. That you've seen the Republicans and how they could go, how ruthless they could be in painting their opponent as soft on crime. You go back to '88 with Dukakis.
Let me give you one. 1990 was it? It was George Bush's campaign, '88. Mr. Horton, who committed all the crimes up in New England. Never in his life was he ever called by anyone Willie. That name was created by Lee Atwater. That name was created by the Republicans. The Willie, the whole attitude of the guy, who's this guy? He's Willie. He's not really a serious guy. He's Willie. Come on, give me a break. They knew what they were doing exactly. Then, as Lee Atwater said, I'm going to make him what's his name's running mate. I'm going to make him Mike Dukakis' running mate. And they're going to get a rapist, a killer, or whatever. And he got let out on weekends and all this nonsense in Massachusetts. And they go, okay, that's exactly what you've done. And it worked. And everybody can remember one name from the '88 campaign, Willie Horton. It was like everywhere. And it worked. Unfortunately, it worked.
And they're trying to do the same with Kamala Harris by making her the border czar. Remember
Billy Brown. But you're going to name. You may not have heard. She may not have heard the name for years, but you're going to show up. They'll be singing it out. Kellyanne Conway, give me a break. They're all going to be singing that song because anything that ties her into the minority community, anything that ties her into the left, anything they could get her in California, work at the San Francisco, they know how to do it. And by the way, it looks like it's the only thing they got left, and that's the scary part. If you want to have a preview of the next 2 months, think about what they need to win. What they have to do is corner her off to the hard left, play the ethnic card as hard as they can, make it scary for the person in the near parts of the city, the edge of the city, not just outside the city, but the edge of the city, like South Philly, Northeast Philly, where I grew up, Staten Island. They know the parts of the city where they're racially edgy. They know that that's where the action is. You know what I'm saying? That's where they're going to go for people, right on the edge of Bucks County, right on the edge of Philly, right on the edge of Staten Island and Bay Ridge in Brooklyn, where the Irish and Italian live. They know where. Hey, they wouldn't be smart Republicans if they didn't know all that stuff, where the votes are.
Now, in addition to the themes of patriotism, which was evident throughout, the speeches, when you go back to Adam Kinzinger talking about no party owns a monopoly on patriotism, and it's certainly not the Republican Party right now. The advisor for Pence was up there. You had Leon Panetta there, and you also had this idea that the Democrats actually want to do something on immigration. Kamala Harris, during that June 27th debate, I was pulling the hair out of my head. I was like, just talk about the Langford border bill. Talk about the Langford border bill. Trump said, blame me for tanking it.
Done it. She has come out, maybe not forcefully enough, but she's taken a step to the action front here from Biden. Biden sat down and sat on his hands and said, "Oh no, isn't it awful? The president, Trump dumped on our bipartisan plan. It was all ready to go." Yeah. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. What she did, unlike Biden, she's come out and said, "I'll sign that bill right now. If it was good enough for us to kind of deal with, it's good enough for me now." In other words, we don't believe in illegal immigration. Politically, they say that. I think sometimes they do, but we got no problem signing a bill that's going to do something to stop this surge. And I think she has to be more so than Biden. I think it will help her politically to be stronger on border enforcement, because no country in the world can allow this to go on forever. If you just start adding these tens of millions up and up and up and up, it's going to be all the people in the country illegally would reach enormous numbers, not just 10 or 12,000, 12 million. It's just going to get through the roof. And we have to legalize the system somehow. We just have to do it. We have to make people check in. They got to official consulates and immigration facilities and do the work. Still any other immigrant. We got to work it out.
Do you think the Democrats should get more concessions and say, look, the days for the Republican border dream bill, that's gone because you tanked it. So this time we need more out of you if we're going to put this back in the floor.
What is the question on the floor?
Oh, sorry. Do you think that the Democrats should say?
Getting hurt. I'm sorry, Michael. I'm not hearing you. Just a second. I don't know why this is. Yeah, can you repeat that again, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, awesome. I was saying, do you think the Democrats should say, the days for the Republican border dream bill, those days are gone, because you had 2 times to vote for this thing and you chose inaction for political purposes. Now we need some concessions. We need a pathway to citizenship. We need a more humane process to get people into this country or to detain them.
I don't think you'll get that far. I think they're lucky to get a bill right now that they agreed to before. The answer to me, as a citizen, you've got to take where people feel sympathy politically. A person who's been in this country for 20 years and has been paying into Social Security and not getting anything out of it, right? The person who's had no benefits, and when they're hitting 65, they may be getting near it now. They may have come over here in their 20s or 30s and they're getting near their retirement and they're not going to see any benefits. That's unfair because they've been paying payroll taxes. So I think you get the person who's been in this country a long time, pays their taxes, stayed out, no, not in the political, not in the judicial system at all, basically obeyed the rules. And you say to the person, well, give the guy or the woman a driver's license, give them a Social Security that matters, give them a green card. Let's get going here. I think there's a lot of sympathy for that. For the guy just coming over the border, cutting through the fence, coming from China, there's no sympathy. I'm sorry. You come from China to go through our southern border illegally, that's a deliberate act of criminal activity. We know what you're doing. So we don't feel sympathy for that person. We just don't. And this thing about cleaning up Venezuela and those other countries, good luck. Good luck. The fact that Americans are going to go in there and change those countries, I wish we could, but we shouldn't be doing it. It's colonialism. We can't change Latin America. We can't change Guatemala, or Cuba. We can't do it. We tried changing Cuba. You can't do it. It's politically wrong. And so the idea that Kamala was supposed to go down there and fix these countries is a joke. It's a joke. And I don't know who, right, left, or center, believed that she could have done it or should be doing it. You can't get rid of Maduro. The people of Venezuela got rid of Maduro. They got rid of him. And if they've got a tyranny on their hands, they got to get rid of it. And that's tough talk, but it's what we've always been told is the right way. Let those countries alone,
I remember back in the 2012 convention, and Bill Clinton was able to convey Washington math to the average, to the layperson. And he made such a compelling case for reelecting Barack Obama, so much so that I thought it was better than how Obama could make the case for himself back then. Obama came out and gave him a big hug at the end of that speech. I remember you guys covered MSNBC, and Steve Schmidt said, "We wish we had our Bill Clinton. We wish we had our version."
Secretary of explaining things.
and then Hillary Clinton, I thought this was the most liberating I've ever seen Hillary Clinton give a speech. And when they chanted, first of all, she said, we got him on the run now. We have him on the run. And then she said, I'm sorry, when the crowd erupted into lock him up, she didn't stop them, but she had this smirk on her face, like how the tables have turned. What were your thoughts about the Clintons and what they?
That was a very strange ability of Barack Obama, who was so up there, so elite in many ways, aloof in many ways. And I wish he didn't treat being the president a gig and just leave like he has. But he wants to go to Hollywood. He wants to make movies and stuff. And he's got his own future to think about. He came back this week fantastically, of course. But I did think it was funny about how Bill Clinton, who knows how to obscure issues, knew how to come back in there and clear up the economic stuff and help out Obama. There's the one thing about politics is the irony. 2 months ago, Kamala Harris was a lefty, hopeless, dangerous part of the ticket that even Biden wouldn't talk about. Now she's at front and center. She's gone from being a caterpillar to being a butterfly. I mean, she's just gone through this transfiguration of, as you said, this effusive feelings. It goes back to her. And it goes back to how well she behaved and conducted herself when she announced that she was going to be the nominee for president. When she put all those delegations together in a matter of 48 hours or something to come up with a majority of delegates. I mean, think about what she did from the time that Joe, went to the showers and threw the towel in, whatever metaphor we use, to her emerging as this powerhouse. My God, she could have come off as a shmoo. She could have come off as, well, I don't know what I should do now. The opposite. I mean, she just took over. It's as if somebody told her that they're going to pull the grenade on the pin on the grenade, and it's going to happen. And sometime in July, be ready. And she was ready. I don't know. Maybe we'll find this way back when we start getting good reporting on what really went on in the inner circle of Biden, who was keeping the secrets from Jill on down and Biden on down, and how long they thought they could avoid having her as the nominee. Their plan, think about it, was to have Biden speak last night. Are you kidding me? I mean, think about it. Biden last night. Oh my God. And the pressure's still on him. And she would have got to speak Wednesday night. That wouldn't have been, it wouldn't have made any sense in terms of popularity. There wouldn't have been a convention that we just saw. If it wasn't for George Clooney, of all people, George Clooney he was the first one to blow the whistle. He just said, this guy doesn't have it in his tank anymore. He's out of gas. He's gone. And then, of course, Nancy Pelosi, with that inevitable way she does with this, I've called it her finesse. Well, she used more than finesse this time. She had Adam Schiff and Jamie Rankin, and they came out just like attacked going after Biden until she got rid of him.
You saw Hillary. Do you think she had this kind of gratification of hearing folks say, lock him up 8 years after, they were chanting the exact same thing about her? You had the general that Obama warned Trump about up there on the stage leading the Republican into chants, and now here we are, and they were chanting lock him up, and she doesn't have to play by the political rules of saying no, don't do that. We're gonna get him at the ballot box. She's free. She's a former Secretary of State. She's not running for office anymore.
Very complicated. Very complicated to figure out Hillary and what women thought of her. Some of them, and they had a point of view they didn't always share with men, but they found her complicating in a way. And I think I'm trying to think about what it is that you could objectively say she didn't quite have going for her. One is that she tried to wear a lot of hats. She tried to wear the hat of Bill Clinton's supportive wife. I'm no Tammy Wynette. Well, she was Tammy Wynette. She covered for him. She just covered for him. So she played that part without authenticity. She covered for his misbehavior the whole time, basically. And she had to play that role, which is a subordinate role, a suppressive role. And then she had to come out and say, I'm on my own now. I'm a Secretary of State. I'm this, I'm that. I'm not, don't think of me as Bill's Tammy Wynette anymore. I don't know how you talk about it, but it's complicated. It's just, it's very difficult to have had the role that she was forced to play in Rife by Bill, and then have to emerge later on. It just was complicated. And I think people saw in a lot of roles that conflicted with each other. I think it's hard. She's a hard person to figure out in many ways. She said a lot of people didn't like me in her book. That's a hard thing to say because politicians I worked for Tip O'Neill. He wanted everybody to love him. He couldn't understand why anybody didn't love him. What's the matter with you? I mean, don't you love me? And that's one way that that Donald Trump is familiar to other politicians. Whatever else he is, he wants people to like him. I don't think they should, but that's what he wants. He wants everybody to like him. In fact, did you say that J.D. Vance, his VP, said, "Why did you get picked?" He said, "Because Donald Trump found out that I liked him." It's human nature, you know.
And because he would overturn the Constitution, something Pence wouldn't do. But
if you're going through the worst of them, the worst of their behavior. And I was a Capitol Hill cop. I got to tell you, I identified with those cops, and the cops who were getting pummeled to death. And I kept thinking, they're looking at that crowd coming in the door with those angry faces, and they're thinking, they're from my neighborhood. These are working guys. These are not college guys, many of them. None of them are college guys. And they identify with West Virginia and the country and the countryside. And they think of them, those people, as coming at trying to kill them. It was a horrible, that's why 4 people committed suicide afterwards. I mean, think about that. What it did to your soul. The people that grew up like you, and now they're kind of bring down the Capitol. Well,
you know, Chris, I'm one of the few young people who was enthusiastically supporting Biden from the beginning, since the Democratic Party had about 17 candidates running in 2019, 2020. And I wanted him to stay in the race. I thought that, the debate was bad, but I thought the Democrats could make the case. Look, we've got more legislation done in one term. You've got to go back to LBJ to make the case that a presidential administration has been this legislatively successful. Yeah. He stood up to Putin more fiercely. He stood up to Putin and looked him dead in the eye more fiercely than Bush, Obama, Clinton, all of them. And Trump, definitely. He has been the only president to prioritize student loan debt forgiveness. He's invested in climate change, combating climate change. He, always seemed to find the perfect chord between the most progressive and the most conservative wings of his party. And I just thought he deserved so much better.
Yeah, well,
how he was treated.
Look, I think we come to the your point of view is genuine and true. And I think it represented, not to generalize, but the Democratic Party base, the African American community, just as a group, has been more loyal. That I watched these guys, people at the convention speaking like that, as you just did. I think a lot of that's about loyalty and gratitude for success and being a good guy and being a good Democratic, regular liberal character. And I think that's noble. The problem is, I don't think he could have gotten better in the next debates if he had any more. I don't think he could have gotten better as a public speaker. His voice was getting weak. And, when you get in your 80s, your voice starts to get weak. And it's like in The Godfather when Johnny Fontaine comes to The Godfather, he says, "My voice is weak. My voice is weak." It's true. And I don't know whether he could have taken on Trump and beaten him. I think he would have had a problem in Pennsylvania. I really do. I think she's going to have a problem in Pennsylvania. I think Trump appeals to those people out in the countryside, the white people, and in a way that they can't get to, not yet. And I'm not sure she got to it this week either. I think it's going to be tough. It's a tough nut to crack out there. So I went through each county. In 67 counties in Pennsylvania, 50 some or more are what James Carville called Alabama. And when you go in those areas, you see nothing but Trump, anti-Biden stuff. And believe it or not, they've crept up from how they voted in 2016 to how they voted in 2020. So it's bubbling out there. It's still growing as a percentage of that population. So the Democrats this year have to rebuild.
Again, we're talking with Chris Matthews, the former host of Hardball on MSNBC. We're just experiencing a little technical difficulties. He'll be back on momentarily. In the meantime, we're talking about whether the Democratic Party was wrong in how it went about pressuring the incumbent president, Joe Biden, out of the 2020 race for the election. And I'm going to pick his brain about 1948 next. I want to see if he would. Hey, Chris. I want to see if he will acknowledge any comparisons and similarities with that particular election. And let's face it, in 1948, Harry Truman, a lot of folks wrote him off. A lot of folks thought he couldn't run for dog catcher. And so I'm going to ask him about that in a moment when he's back on.
Michael.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, I'm back. So
Can you turn on your camera?
Okay, just a second. Okay, just a second, please.
Mm-hmm.
Chris. My God. Yeah.
Okay, I can see.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, I've always made the comparison with 1948, and I personally thought that we could be heading towards a 1948 situation where a lot of folks write off the incumbent president, all the punditry, the political class, the elites, the other party, and then it turns out that Truman defeats Dewey at the end. That a lot of people decide that they're going to reject MAGA, and the reason why I thought that is because since 2016. People have rejected MAGA year after year after year. You go back to 2017, Doug Jones won in the state of Alabama. 2018, the House goes to the Democrats. The squad makes their debut. 2019, Andy Beshear wins in the state of Kentucky. 2020, we know how that went. 2021, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff win in the state of Georgia. 2022, the red wave that was supposed to come never came. 2023, we won. Democrats won off-year elections. And so I just thought that the trend was that people have rejected Trump time and time again. Even in 2016, the majority of human beings never said, I want Donald Trump as commander-in-chief. They voted for Hillary Clinton. What do you think about that assessment? I understand the argument that Biden got old and he wasn't the same, but I always said, folks didn't vote for Biden in 2020 because of his speaking skills. Even in 1988, he wasn't the best speaker. But I thought that people still resonated with his vision for America better than Trump's vision for America. And Trump's been, so negative. Usually it's the Morning in America speech. When Clinton was campaigning, Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow was the theme song. And Trump's only talking about a nation in decline. And I thought Biden was the more optimistic candidate.
Well, the trouble with that is, and I can go back to metaphors, and I can say that Donald Trump is Ingemar Johansson. He's the Swedish guy that knocked out Floyd Patterson with his thunder and lightning punch, his one Sunday punch. And then, of course, Patterson, who everybody liked, all came back and beat him a couple of times. And it was just a fluke. The trouble with the fluke argument is to look at the polls now in Pennsylvania. Look at the polls in these states across the country. I mean, he's still at 47, and she's about 47, but she could climb, or she could be reduced. It depends who gets control of this campaign the last 2 months. I don't think Trump is a fluke. I think he plays to an anger. It may be misplaced, displaced. It's the anger from the white guy, if you will, who seems to feel that people, and I don't feel this because obviously I was rooting for him. Barack Obama bugged people. Did you see, was it Michelle who said about the highly educated people, African Americans, and how it bothers people in her speech? I said, that's the first somebody of color has actually said that. But that's so true. Suppose you were a guy who barely got out of high school. You got a job at the local gas station or truck delivery, and you're proud of yourself. You're making a few bucks, not much, but you're paying the bills. Kids aren't going to private school or anything, and you're not going on any fancy trips anywhere, but you're doing okay. And then you see this guy, Harvard Law, Columbia, and you look at her, Harvard Law, and you go, Jesus, where did I miss the boat? Did I miss one of the buses I'm supposed to have caught? And I think you go, how did he get there? And I'm still trying to make the next paycheck. And how'd that happen? And what's wrong with this system? What's the deal here? And so you can't chalk it up to affirmative action. That won't work because they're all really smart people. You can't do that. You listen to him talk. He talks like a guy who went to school, is educated. He probably watches sophisticated movies and stuff. I mean, you go, how'd this guy get there? And I think that's what bugs him. I don't think it's all in anger, and they're not all angry, but within their lives, they vote for Trump. I got family members like this. I'm telling you, they're good people, but they didn't get the breaks. Their family didn't think about college or law school or anything like that. They don't think like that. They didn't have those breaks or the kind of families that think like that. They just go out and get out of college and get a job. And that doesn't take you that far. And some guys, there's people like Spielberg and all those. You hear about guys that quit college and they go super speed. But most people say you got to get that degree. And so I think that's part of it. And I think cops, firemen, delivery guys, mechanics, plumbers, you know where they are. And they'll probably be nice to you, Michael. I don't think they're just person to person. They're angry, but they do feel they missed the bus. How else do you explain it? And they hate the IRS. They hate the FBI. They hate any bureaucrat that gives them trouble, whether parking tickets or speeding tickets, or they're tired of property taxes, all the taxes they have to pay. They resent all that stuff. And yet they know there are people living below them in the ghetto, in the North Philly places. They know there are people that live in a lot worse lives than them. So they can't argue that they're especially ticked off. You can't logically say that, but there's a lot of attitude out there. And it's different. And part of it is rural people. When I went to a religious retreat in high school, I went to Catholic high school. We went to a retreat out in Reading, Pennsylvania. And of course, we snuck out of everything and didn't go to anything they were supposed to go to. But I went to the local diner. I love diners. And in the jukebox, you know what a jukebox is? They had country western. I go, where am I? Am I in Utah? What am I doing? I'm an hour from Philly, and it's all country western out here. And that country western thing appeals to the same people I'm talking about, the Appalachian people. And J.D. Harris knew it, or J.D. Vance knew it. He wrote a book about it. A lot of these people missed that boat.
And that brings me to Tim Walz. I mean, I'm more excited to see the vice presidential debate than actually the presidential debate between Tim Walz, J.D. Vance, a guy who's a venture capitalist, and then someone who's a football coach, someone who's literally from the heartland of America. You can hear it in his accent. You can't fake that. He's from Minnesota. I mean, he's from the middle of the country. And these two are going to go at it. Someone who's authentically from middle America and someone who's putting it on for the election, someone who used his platform once he got out of his humble beginnings to bash those back in, where he grew up. What do you think about that?
Well, there's an interesting rivalry. It's like a swords and sandals movie from the 50s, where one guy's got a little knife, the other guy has a spear or an axe, and they never give them the same weapons because that'd be normal. They have to have the same weapons. Who wants to watch that fight? It's better if you give one guy a totally different weapon. Yeah, it'd be strange weapons because one guy would be likable, the other guy would be a wise ass, and you go, I don't know, this guy he understood the cultural reasons why people voted for Trump, and now he's using that vote to get elected to where he is now. And look, I think the big story is the Trump hates his kids. They're the ones that told him to pick this guy. He was going to pick Burgum, the guy who's drilling for more oil and gas, and the guy that could undergird his argument about being a great business guy. And here this knucklehead who's got all his problems, and he just seems that he's got more because the press is going to not stop digging. There's going to be more trouble before the debate, and they got their eye on this guy. I don't know why they do, but they think they see a real super. Went to Yale Law. They said they know this guy. They know how smart he is. He's not some guy that just loves Donald Trump. There's something there that's sneaky, and they're going to catch him. That's why I really think. As for the debate, I think it's going to be hard for them to get. I think it's going to be hard for them to make him into Comrade Waltz. I don't think he looks like that. I mean, fairly or not, he doesn't look like a lefty. He doesn't seem like a guy from the squad or anything like that. He doesn't look like he's out for the sharpshoot the country and change all the rules. And he seems like the coach. By the way, one thing about this Democratic Party, if you had said the word character in the Clinton era, you'd be the bad guy. What's the character issue? Come on, the character issue. It was in that Michael Douglas movie, The American President. He talked about the character issue. That was considered a joke. It was made up by Republicans to get Bill Clinton. The word character was used in this convention this past week. They like the word character now because they're talking about Clinton. I'm sorry. They're talking about Trump. They're talking about Trump. And Trump has trumped all the Clinton things. They got this guy's bigger rap sheet than Clinton's ever had. And they go, and this guy tried to bring down the government. He's got 34, felony counts against him and more coming perhaps. And they're changed on character. And Friday Night Lights, when they started talking about Friday Night Football in Texas, I mean, we didn't have that up in Northeast Philly or anything, but Friday Night Lights and the football thing, and they did everything except talk about the cheerleaders. If they started talking about the cheerleaders, that this party has really changed. They got all the pom-pom girls and all. They almost went that far. Apple pie, football, Friday night, the whole thing. And I said, this doesn't sound like the Democrats, but it was. It was.
You remember 2004, and you remember how they went after Kerry for his military record. J.D. Vance came out the gate swinging with his stolen ballot.
Well, he made a mistake because, look, in all fairness, John Kerry served in the military. He was shot at. He shot back. He may have killed some guy. He was really in the military, and he got a Purple Heart or two of them. And after the war, he came back and spoke to the Senate Democratic Party in the Senate country, testified about the evils of our combat soldiers. He made a lot of enemies in that speech. And so when he ran for president, he made the big mistake of announcing reporting for duty, like he had never gotten into the anti-war garb. He never went from being soldier, warrior, to being an anti-war guy. He never admitted the complexity of the war, that it wasn't courageous to go fight in the jungle against the Viet Cong, but it was also probably a totally wrong war for us to be in. So, and the behavior of our people, and some of them. So when he went back and tried to run for president, he acted like the middle period of his opposition to the war had been forgotten. It hadn't been. But those soldiers remembered it. And they came back and attacked his military record. They should have just attacked him for what he said after the war. But they went after him in a way that sounded, in the ads, the way the ads were produced, attacked the military's record of John Kerry. I think it's pretty rotten because that's not what they had against him. They had against him, when he's up and riding down that swift boat up and down the Mekong River with his shirt off and in the sun and being like a little bit of a cowboy. I think I know he told me he liked it. He said it was great. It was fighting for the country. The rock and roll music's playing on the boat. We all saw the movies in Apocalypse Now. These soldiers were regular guys too. They're 18 years old, 19 years old. They like rock and roll. They like all the stuff they could do out there. And people were getting killed later on. And it was nuts. It was something I didn't join in that war. I went to Vietnam. I mean, I went to the Peace Corps. That war was terrible.
Yeah, and what about J.D. Vance's decision to go after him? I mean, J.D. Vance is someone who prides himself in being a veteran himself, someone who said he proudly wore the uniform of his country, and he went after his opponent now for saying that he carried a weapon in war.
Well, he carried a weapon of war. I think the phrase was, "I carried a weapon of war." Yeah, it was maybe too loosey-goosey. It suggested I used a weapon in combat. And he didn't. Well, you pay for those sins. I think it's a venial sin, but they're going to whack him a while for that because he suggests he was in. Look, we've had people who've said they served in Vietnam and never went. Okay, in politics, I know a couple of them. So a lot of people take glory they don't deserve.
Earlier you're talking about the kind of sense of elitism that the Obama administration had, and I'm thinking about David Axelrod, and
Do you think he liked Joe Biden?
I don't, and I was kind of annoyed with Axelrod throughout the year. I love Joe Biden.
He kept taking down Biden.
Yeah, and remember in 2016, Obama chose Hillary Clinton over Joe Biden, and they used Bo's death and said, "I don't think you're in the right headspace to mount a serious campaign." And even in the Rose Garden speech, Biden said, it's not that he's not in the right headspace. He just thought he didn't have enough time to mount an effective campaign against Clinton.
Yeah, you don't think there was some Ivy League stuff there?
I do. I think, I've always made the comparison. I think John F. Kennedy is very comparable to Barack Obama, both lofty, wonderful speakers, once in a generation kind of leaders. They naturally draw people to them. Then you've got people who are creatures of the legislature. That's Lyndon Johnson. That's Joe Biden. He knows what buttons to push. He knows who would respond to certain phrases and certain legislative items. And then you've got Trump, who, let's face it, both him and Nixon view the presidency as a way to punish their enemies. It's a vehicle to punish their enemies. They keep an enemies list.
Yeah.
And I kind of made sense. I don't know where to put.
Well, here's how I look at it. I'm a little cruder than you. My view is that Biden didn't make the academic grade with either Obama or Hillary, and Hillary had gone to Wellesley and had gone to Harvard Law, and she talked the same language as Obama, and I think he felt that she was on a higher upper class academically. And he said, this guy went to Syracuse? Where did he go? To Delaware? He's not. I feel that. That's what I sense. And I think that the Clintons, their administration was all Ivy Leaguers. They didn't pick people from Boston College or Holy Cross or Georgetown or people like. I'm sorry, that's the way they did it. And I think that Obama did the same thing. And that's a fact. But everybody's got burdens you can carry. You didn't go to Harvard, but make it some other way. I mean, find some other way to get to the top. But I think there was some of that there. The fact that Biden was never upstairs at the White House for 8 years. Do you know that? He never got invited upstairs to the Obama's world. Do you think he resents that a little? Do you think that's occurred to him and Jill? They never got invited upstairs? Come on. That would occur to me. I'd say, how about have me up for a hot dog? Have me up for something. Have me up for mac and cheese. How come I never got upstairs?
Right.
And I don't think Nixon ever got upstairs with Eisenhower. And I doubt I don't know what Johnson and Kennedy were like, but I got the feeling that George H. Walker Bush never got upstairs with Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan. So there's that. Maybe they don't want to make him. They don't want the vice president to see what it looks like up there. Which couch am I going to sit on? Where am I going to relax up here? I'm going to be up here someday,
What about Kamala Harris? Like Obama's silence after Biden's withdrawal was deafening. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton immediately jumped from endorsing Biden to endorsing Harris, and a lot of people fell in line. But it seemed like Obama wanted a contested convention. Like he wanted there to be some kind of contest before he decided to give his support to Kamala.
Maybe he had doubts, or maybe he wanted to be a richer display of democracy, to have these mini conventions that James Carville was talking about, have 4 or 5 conventions around the country. And then, but she went about it a different way. She called up the delegations from each of the states and asked them to endorse her. I mean, she went around and created her own convention. I mean, she did do it democratically, in the way they did with Eagleton back in 72. They did it quickly. But she managed to get a majority of the delegates together. I don't know what would have been better. That's a great question. What was he really up to? Was he trying to get somebody else in there? I don't think he was dying for Gavin Newsom to be president. I mean, he's the most logical guy. Or Pritzker, come on, or Whitmer. I don't think he had a candidate. Do you think he did?
I don't know, because I think we're in an era where all of the Democrats who are eligible to run, or who were considered eligible to run, we're not in his world. The only one I can think of is maybe Pete Buttigieg. Maybe that was someone, but I think he just wanted, in my mind, Obama's more of a professor. And I think that's why he wasn't as great as a party leader like Bill Clinton. I think personally a Democratic contest would have been detrimental to the party. Every time we've had a party contest and an incumbent stepping down, it resulted in a Republican administration. You go back to 52. Harry Truman steps down. He's not running for re-election. There's a party contest. Eisenhower. 68, of course, is a year that a lot of people have been talking about this year. Lyndon Johnson doesn't run. There's a party contest. By the time Hubert Humphrey gets the nomination, it's almost worthless the way the convention was so chaotic. And so I thought that maybe, if we had a contest, it would have not have been for the good of the party. And I was a little annoyed with Obama's silence for that reason. But what about Kamala Harris's pedigree? Do you think that's something that the Obamas resonate with? And, I know I went to Howard, she went to Howard. Is that something, or are they still looking for Ivy Leaguers in your view?
I don't know. I think she should more and more talk about having gone to Howard. I think that was a statement that she made, coming from a blended family of immigrants. I thought she ought to talk about more about her upbringing and her mom and her dad, how they didn't get along eventually, but what was it like to have a tiger mother? A real tough mother. The half-assed comment, that sort of spoke a little bit the way she talked to her. And then a more different Jamaican father. I mean, it seems like two different worlds to me. But I think talking about that be helpful. I think identifying as a woman of color was her decision to go to Howard and join the AKA and the whole lifetime sorority relationship, which she's kept up, obviously. I think that's really powerful. And I think in an interesting way, it gives you a little cover for being a little more centrist, to be a little more centrist plus that. The overlay is pretty clear to me. I'm a minority woman. I'm a woman of color, but I'm also a regular Democrat. I'm just that. And I think it suits her well. It's whole new. I've said a while ago, I said, I hope that this country has a short election that's a real sprint and it can outrun history.
It's like a parliamentary election now.
Yeah, it's a British style election, because it's short enough that maybe we can outrun history. Because the history is that a person like her doesn't get a chance, isn't even considered. It's written off, it's scratched from the race. And the idea that she has a real chance to win is because it's going to be a close election. We're not going to have 2 years to argue about this or think about it and maybe ruin it. Maybe this is 75 days that's just the right length to beat history. And then maybe it's time to beat history. And so she's got a good she's got a 50-50 chance, I'd call it now. I really do. And I think that means that the wrapping was done this week. She was wrapped up wonderfully. And the music and the cross-cultural stuff and the blacks, everybody there was more than representative of the country. And there's a glow coming out of it. And she's got it on her face. She's a glowing look. She looks glowing. But she's going to have to answer some tough questions. She's going to eventually find her way within 3 feet of some tough reporter.
Yeah.
A real reporter, not a friendly reporter. And that person will give her a tough time. Where do you stand on abortion rights? Are you really for bringing back Roe v. Wade? You don't sound like it. You make it sound like keep the government off my back, get the government out of this. That's not exactly Roe v. Wade. That's trimesters. Do you want to get back to that? Well, then she'll have to answer that. The difference between her and Biden. Biden obviously wasn't comfortable with the issue as a Catholic male, but these are questions of how are you going to deal with the guys. The Middle East situation is so tricky, and people like Biden have been scared to death to being identified as anti-Israel, and so they've gone along with the military aid to Israel, in a way that a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, if we're arming them and they're using our arms, aren't we part of this? Because the communists, the Russians were giving arms to the Vietnamese we were fighting, and we thought they were on their side because they were giving them their gun. They're giving them the guns. Well, if we're giving Israel the guns, aren't we on their side? Yeah. And that's the argument that she's going to handle. And it's tricky. How do you say I'm Israel's side, but I'm not with Bibi Netanyahu? Or I'm for a two-state solution, knowing damn well that most Israelis don't want a two-state solution. Okay. So how do you keep saying, like you're Tom Friedman in the New York Times, I'm for they say, I do this, I'm for a two-state solution, knowing that no Israelis are for it.
Right. And that's a good point. And Leon Panetta was on the show, and he made the exact point. A lot of the young people who are saying, we need a two-state solution or a ceasefire. You got to get Hamas and Israel on the same footing to get there. But she embraced, continuing the Biden policy on Israel, which has literally been the traditional American policy on Israel, which is we will allow Israel to defend itself for the October 7th attack, and we will give them everything they need for that purpose. A lot of criticism from the left has been given to the Democratic Party for its treatment of or dismissal of the plight of the Palestinians. There was even a congregation of folks outside the United Center that said they wanted to see a particular speaker who was going to highlight the plight of the Palestinians in Gaza, and they were disappointed in the candidate. They were disappointed in the party for not allowing them to have a platform on the DNC stage. What do you think about, you've seen a lot of anti-war movements in this country. The 68 convention comes to mind, the way they treated Humphrey like he was just a puppet of Lyndon Johnson until about the last few days of the election. Do you think that she runs the risk of losing support among younger voters, among more progressive voters on this particular issue?
Yeah, I think so. Like my kids. And maybe they deserve to lose it. I mean, but Hamas has not been a great political leadership. They've spent all their time and money. They grabbed it themselves, but all those tunnels. I mean, they're like great escape business. Constantly building tunnels. That's all they did. Why did they make a killing on the shore? They got a beach there. Can they make some money from Europeans on the beach? I mean, it sounds crass, but they got to start building a country. They're not going to defeat Israel in their lifetimes. Why do they keep telling their people they're going to defeat Israel and take back Jerusalem and Tel Aviv? They're not going to do it. So what are they telling their people? We got to divide up this land and make the best of it. We got to unite with the West Bank and make the best of it. We got to start cutting deals and building an economy. I don't know. I've always liked. They're very likable people. It's very easy to fall for the Arabs because when you meet them, you like them. They're a very hospitable people, and they're making the best in a place like East Jerusalem, up around the old city where I spent when I left the Peace Corps in Africa. The first thing I did is after I left Kenya, I went bugging up right up there to Israel. I said, "There I am. I'm in Tel Aviv. I'm in Jerusalem. I love this place." But you can see the conflict when you see it there. You see they're occupying the land. These are Arabs. There's going to be more of them than there are Israelis. They got to figure this out.
Where would you put Harris? Historically, I made the comparisons with JFK, Lyndon Johnson, and Nixon, and I was trying to figure out, is Harris more like a Humphrey? Is she, very progressive on civil rights issues? Is she more like Bobby Kennedy, being that she was the Attorney General of California and she's got a prosecutorial mind? Where would you place her amongst?
Well, in California politics, I put her in California, and she certainly was very good at winning the attorney generalship and the Senate race and positioning herself. I recommended her for vice president. I wrote a column in the San Francisco Chronicle, and I said, "This is what you got to do. You got to pick her." She had it all on paper. I think she has yet to be exposed. I think that question has everybody else asking it. What is she going to turn out to be? And I think we're not going to know till she's in office. And I hope, I said this in Morning Joe this morning, I said, I hope she is the same person she was in that room last night. I think the Democrats they can't keep, I know they want to do this. They want to get into office with the help of some Republican votes. They want to be bipartisan in approach. They want to be a general election victor with a majority of the votes. And then they get into office, and because you have to rely on your party, you got to rely on all Democrats to vote for you all the time, then you go left. And that disappoints people because they said, you courted me one way, you've married me another way. How come you're different than you are when you should marry a person the way you courted them? Don't you think? That's how people are legitimate. And if you don't behave that way when you're president, you've let down the country, especially the people in the middle. I don't think they should do that. I think whatever she runs from now to election day is who she should be. I'm sorry if that offends some progressives, but that's what you have to be. You can't let down the people in the middle. And I think she can do it. She showed it last night.
And in your article with the Philadelphia Inquirer, you said you alluded to sports for a reason. A debate is the closest American politics comes to an athletic contest. In your view, did this DNC influence the tone of the debate, particularly around issues like democracy, the rule of law?
I think it put them on equal terms. I give Carville and James Paul McGowan, they've been talking this up for a while. I give, in an odd way, Donald Trump, because I think his language about our country is so bad that it sort of forced the Democrats to be patriotic. It's like, we have to defend this country because this guy's just trashing it. And I think conditions changed. As I said earlier, the character issue now works for the Democrats. It's against Trump. It's not defending Bill Clinton. The patriotic issue has really reflected history. In 1972, the Democrats said, "Come home, America. Come home, America." Like there's something wrong with this. I think to some extent, the 1619 Project has enraged people in one way, and it's also made them patriotic and say, "We're not that bad." And this country's not all founded on slavery. It's not all about slavery. You can argue that it is, but it's not going to be a big winning argument. It's just not. Nobody wants to believe the whole founding fathers' business was about slavery. Nobody's going to believe it. And they found themselves back in a position of defending the way we are. Isn't that interesting? The way we are, even as bad as we are at times, as the way we are, they're going to defend that because Trump's been attacking so hard. I think it's a strange thing. Michael, these are all great questions because they're wide open, as you know. They're rhetorical in a way because we don't know what she's going to be like tomorrow morning when she gets hits with a tough reporter, somebody from the editorial page of the Times, with some really interesting questions that I haven't thought of. We don't know how well she'll do in the debate. I think she's going to do well. I think Trump's afraid she's going to do well.
Yeah.
But we're all going to be watching. That is going to be an athletic competition, by the way. It's about guts. And
I remember
being in the same room with a person is different than talking about them.
Yeah.
We all know that's true. She's not talking about Trump. She's talking to him a few feet away. And he can growl and get excited and scary. And she's got to deal with that.
Yeah.
He's not going to make it easy for her.
Yeah.
He wants to make a fool of her. He wants to do an hour and a half to make a fool of her. That's what he wants to do.
Yeah. And folks in his inner circle said, he respected Hillary Clinton. He doesn't respect Kamala Harris. He doesn't think she's smart enough to go up against him. And even in the 2020 debate, I remember a lot of talk about her prosecuting Mike Pence. She's going to bring it to Mike Pence. And there was a lot of expectations set, I thought, high expectations set for VP or Kamala Harris at the time, before she was VP. And as well as she did, I thought Mike Pence was the one driving the discussion. He would, throw a little piece of red meat and she would respond to it. Now, her responses were great, but it seemed like he was the one controlling the direction of the debate. And there was a moment where she said, "I'm speaking to Mike Pence. I'm speaking." Do you think she's going to be able to bring that same level of, the confidence, of, assertiveness to Donald Trump, who, let's face it, he tells 60 lies a minute. He's like a bullet train. You got to really be disciplined in how you decide to respond to Trump, because he'll say a bunch of things that are worth responding to, but only one that actually will probably get you points in a debate stage.
I don't know. I think she's been in court enough to know how to deal with a defendant. And if she established, I've got to go now, but I got to tell you one thing. One of the reasons the 2012 election was tricky is that first debate with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, I didn't like it at the time. He talked down to President Obama. He talked down to him. And I thought there's something that's skirting the edge here of a racial attitude. And I like Mitt Romney today, but I didn't like that. I thought, why is he talking down to the President of the United States? And he won that debate. Mm-hmm. And I think her attitude has got to be, she's got to talk down to Trump. And she's got to persist with that. And she has to be strong as a prosecutor with all the evidence and say, I should be here and you should not be here. And establish those rules. But this could all be decided in the first 5 minutes. The Kennedy-Nixon debate, the first of the 4 debates, was decided in the first 8 minutes. When Kennedy came in strong, and he said, even though we're debating domestic policy tonight, we agreed to, this is going to affect our role in the Cold War. And if we look weak here, we fail here at home, we will fail internationally. And he had all that established, and Nixon spent the rest of those debates defending himself, playing defense. I never figured out why he did, except he liked Kennedy. He didn't want to be seen as the bad guy. Henry Cabot Lodge's roommate, or his running mate, said, erase the assassin's image. Erase the assassin's image right before he went on the air. So he was intimidated himself. She has to get Trump intimidated. She's got to do it. And that's not going to be easy.
And Trump's been distancing himself from Project 2025, his stance on abortion. You grilled Trump and said, should women be punished? And he said, I believe there should be some sort of punishment. I think all of those things are things.
Off in that word, some. Go watch the tape. He thinks there ought to be some form of punishment. He landed on that word punishment, and not even the most prolific, loud pro-lifers have ever said the woman needs to be punished. They've never said that. He didn't know what he was talking about. And when he said that, he did not know what he was talking about. And he never took it back. His staff put out sort of statement. No words from him. He has yet to take that back. That's what I got a problem with some of these reporters that don't emphasize that fact. That was in Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's on tape. Anybody can go look at it. I gave him all the time in the world. And he said there needs to be some form of punishment. And then he says, in all the years since, I just wanted to give the states the right to make these decisions and to end Roe v. Wade. And I deserve credit for getting rid of Roe v. Wade. Yeah? No, you did this. You caused the punishment going on in all these states now. You did it.
Well, Chris, this has been a pleasure. It's always a joy to talk to you. Thank you so much for being able to make time to come on the program. I'm eternally grateful to you, sir, and I wish you all the best. Look forward to hearing from more of you as we get closer and closer to the election day. Thanks again for what you brought to the table.
Thank you. Good luck with the law. Okay. You take care.
All right, you too.